Thank you for being here.
You are so welcome.
We're all honored to have you with us. And I want to talk about somehow thoughts on love. But I'm going to start by just asking some questions also about aging
Sure.
and how you think about life. And I have to say, Anne Lamott quotes live in my head.
Oh, thank you.
You have an ability to put into a single sentence what theologians and philosophers devote books to, and you're clearer.
Oh,
the one that my favorite, I think, is the opposite of faith is not doubt, it's certainty.
Well, that was the great theologian Paul Tillich. So I've attributed it always to him, but it's a brilliant line.
But you said it better.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then there was a recent one you said, you may not even remember, but you were on the Today Show recently and asked some kind of question, and your response to it was, left to my own devices, my mind is like a monkey on LSD at a shopping mall.
Yeah.
Which will also live in my head forever. And the one from Somehow that I also just really loved was, life is such a mystery, you have to wonder if God drinks a little.
Really? Now more than ever. Yeah.
You've written about aging, and that's we've been talking about a lot here already this morning, and we'll continue to. But you recently published an op-ed in the Washington Post recently, I think last summer. You remember that?
No.
No, okay.
No.
About aging, and one of the things I loved about it was that there are a lot of people who write about aging, and it's kind of aging and saging, it's wisdom, it's wonderful, isn't everything great? And then there are the people who write about all the awful things that come with age. And you put them together so gently and sweetly without denying the vulnerabilities, but acceptance and a focus on what's good. So I wanted to ask you what you think about your own aging, how you think about it. You know, what is aging for you? Something positive? Is it mixed?
It's really a mixed grill, and it often depends on how I've slept. It's it's everything. We went to my husband and I went to Yosemite to escape the festivities and of Monday's festivities, and thankfully the Australian Open tennis championships were on TV, so we really had a very blissful time, and I was very aware of my body, because the last time I was in Yosemite was 4 years ago, and I would have been 66, and I was a lot more spry. I just was. And now I have a hip. I don't need a new hip, but I have a hip that never it's not going to be what it was, and my feet hurt. And I don't have a lot of the really awful things, like my husband, who's a year younger, which comes up in a surprising number of conversations, has different things, and they're worse. He has more arthritis. He has a neck thing. He has a back thing. He helped somebody off the floor the other day, and his back has been out for a week. So I was aware of our physical decline, and that we would walk and walk and walk and walk, and then I would grab my hip like Walter Brennan, and limp around. But here's the thing. And I was getting like 12,000 steps a day. Now I have a physical therapist. I'm sure we're the same age, and I'm sure that you don't have the coterie of doctors that I have. But the audiologist, the physical therapist, the the optimal. I just had cataract surgery. My physical therapist, Simon, who I was hoping to be engaged to at some point, because if you're older, a lot of you look very young to me, but if you're older and they want you to do physical therapy at your age, really, really, really do it. Like, these people know things. At first I felt like, well, don't you know who I am? I'm not gonna, you have to do at Kaiser, you have to do a hip care class to get the physical therapy for your hip. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do your hip care class, you know. And then but in 12-step recovery, they always say the willingness comes from the pain. So when I've made myself in enough physical or psychiatric pain, then I get the help that is so freely offered, especially if you're a little bit older. So my physical therapist, Simon, my fiance, said he thought 6,000 to 7,000 steps was fine for me at this age, that 10,000 was always arbitrary. So I was getting 10,000 in Yosemite, and I don't bounce back. My body is not nearly as forgiving as it was 4 years ago, and stuff like that. But at the same time, today, they sent me a driver, and we drove around campus for half an hour. We got here at 10:30. And we got somewhere here, not here. We got here at 11. But you know what I thought, what age has given me was how absolutely powerless I was over the situation. I had no ability to control or manage or anything. And then I have a caseworker named Nikki here, who probably makes everything work at all besides Martha. And I thought, between her and the driver, I don't even have a dog in this, you know? And I can just sit here and drink my water, and which I did. And that's a blessing of being older, is that you realize, I mean, I'm going to go to my grave with trying to control and manipulate everybody into doing what I'm positive would be a good idea for them to do, including Mr. Trump. But at some point, like your late 60s, you realize that you're the crazy person, that you can't, that you have a disorder. The more that you're trying to control and get people to do what you're just positive is a good idea for them, is the crazier you're going to feel. And this surrender comes with older age, of like, fine, you know, I'll probably end up in the right place, and nothing I contribute to the conversation is going to help anyone. When I first got sober in 1986, there was an old timer, and in 12-step recovery, there tend to be these beautiful prayers of letting go and surrender and gratitude and whatnot. And everybody memorizes them and says them upon waking. And then at bedtime, prayers of gratitude of, God, thank you. And the old timer said, I'll tell you what we say. He said, when we wake up, we say, whatever. And when we go to sleep, we say, oh, well. And those have really become my prayers. And that doesn't mean I'm not an activist, and I'm not actively joining the resistance and every act of mercy and kindness and caring for the poor and getting to the food pantry with sacks of food from Safeway. But it means that that's one of the great blessings. There's a myopia of older age that I'm very sensitive and appreciative of, which is that I cannot fixate on you the way I used to. I cannot fixate on everything the way I used to, because I'm keeping track of what I need to and whatnot. And so the blessing of the myopia, of the slight blurriness, God, what a blessing. That the fixation tools have been dented.
I think people ask sometimes about regrets, and I say, I have a lot of regrets, I'm sure, but I can't remember what they are.
Yeah. Well, I said on the Today Show, you know, the guy that I was with, Daniel Pink, who's just lovely, he wrote a book on the blessings of regrets, that when you think back to the regrets, it reminds you, it's a reminder of what is most of value to you in the world. That I wish I had committed to a 10-minute meditation, which I am barely kind of sort of able to do mostly, right? And he was speaking on the next to me on regret, on how he doesn't regret anything because it all gave him valuable information. I said, I regret everything, you know, but I don't really, because the willingness came from the pain again. And so when I had caused myself enough pain by talking to myself in either a bad way that I could have or should have or might have, or why didn't I, or this. That's so painful. That self-projection is the most painful experience we have, I think. And so then I do something different, and I'm always going like this with myself. Oh, it's okay, honey. It's okay. Never mind. Or forgetting, the endless forgetting. And I think, but I'm remembering so much that kind of blows my mind, so I talk to myself differently because of the voice of regrets. It's like the voice of, it's like, thanks for sharing. My husband, whose name is Neil Allen, wrote a book called Better Days, Tame Your Inner Critic. And I met Neil 8.5 years ago, and he said on one of our first dates, on our second date, he made me cry, but we'll save that for another day. He said, have you ever heard the voice inside you that seems to keep you small and worried and not and I said, have I ever heard that voice? And I said, I have always heard that voice. That has been the main voice. And I think for most women, it's been the voice. You shouldn't be too big. You shouldn't be too juicy. You shouldn't steal the light, whatever. And it's maybe the same for men. But he calls that the inner critic. Jung called it, or Freud called it, superego. And it saved us when we were little, right? Because we didn't run out into the street, and we didn't swim alone or out too far. But at 70 or 40 or 20 or whatever you are, that voice that kind of keeps you slightly shamed and so anxious is just the greatest roadblock to becoming a creative and wild, exuberant person of curiosity and being here for this life. Like, I think you're probably all very good with traffic safety, right? But something, that inner critic tells you, no, don't do that. Do not say that. Do not try that. Look at the bishop in DC yesterday and I mean, no offense to the many MAGA people here, but what she said was, let's think about mercy and tenderness and compassion of the people that are so frightened. And he called her a hater later, that they're haters, those nutty, mercy, compassion people. But so that was freedom from the inner critic that said, this is a national prayer, save this for another time, save this for the church, she just said it. And so for me, one of the things that age has given me, I just don't have the time. I just don't have the time for that voice anymore. It's like, if not now, when? It took me until I was about in my 50s to wear swimsuits on beaches and pools because I felt so shy about my jiggly thighs, or my butt. And at around 50, you think, what the fuck? Like, who am I? That I love warm water. That's like church for me. And at about 50, and consequently and more often, I think, who am I? I love this. I love that. So the original question was, is it a mixed grill? And it's really a mixed grill. Like, I still really hurt from Yosemite, right? And I also now take a medicine that means I can't take Advil because it's supposedly the same thing. So a normal person would take 3 Advil and 3 Tylenol. Hope none of you are medical students, because I know it's too much and I could die later today, but I can't take the Advil, right? So it's a mixed grill. But at the same time, I had this moment of peace and surrender in the car when I realized I'm in charge of almost nothing. I'm in charge of our animals. They don't have opposable thumbs. I'm not in charge of my son. He's 35. I don't get to run next to him on his hero's journey with my juice boxes and my sunscreen, I'm in charge of, you don't know that at 30 and 40, how little you're actually in charge of. And when you do, it's like, wow, you get to make some decisions here. How am I going to spend this one precious day that I'm still here for? So many people younger than I have have died. And that's another gift of being older, is that people like and somehow I wrote about my friend Karen, who was so much younger than me and a runner. She had some idiopathic lung thing and died last year. But that's one thing, is that you realize we're all on borrowed time, you know? And so you make choices based on spending wisely.
Yeah. You don't know when the clock runs out.
Yeah.
So can I ask you about Somehow?
Yeah.
It reads like it's a prayer book for people who think they don't need prayer or don't want prayer, but get prayer from it. It does read as a very, there's something powerfully spiritual, religious about it. And there's not an ounce of preachiness, not an ounce of, you know, sort of telling people what to do. And I don't know how anyone can write that way. I'm just in awe of being able to tell these stories and describe these feelings in such a caring, thoughtful way that
thank you.
Make you feel
better.
better.
Well, it's about love, you know, in all of its distressing guises, as the food pantry. And getting out of your car to get a bottle of water for the homeless people on hot days. I know we don't call them unhoused. There's a piece about taking care of the unhoused and how they found, you know, how terrified they were of my efforts to help them. And there's making toast for someone when there is absolutely nothing else that can possibly help them. And it's about the radical self-love. When I first got sober, I had a mentor, let's call her all these years, called Horrible Bonnie, who I write about in this book too. And she said something that changed my life. Right over there. She said, watch the self-talk, because it's that inner critic. And it says, why did you say that? Why did you say the F word at Stanford? Why did you make little MAGA jokes? Why did you? And she said, watch the self-talk. Like, these pants are not my cutest pants, my thinnest pants, but they're clean pants, right? And so I've been at Yosemite and I wore, and you know, stuff. Watch the self-talk. That's love. Love is not trying to fix and save and help people. Help is the sunny side of control. Love is that I don't know about the hole you've gotten yourself into. But I could sit there with you. I have water. We could, and I don't have anything. I don't have a cold, and I can share my water with you. That's about as Jesus-y as it gets, by the way, is to sit with someone and say, are you thirsty? And there are many, many kinds of thirst. So I am a Sunday school teacher, and I do write about my kids sometimes because they're so funny. And they so bust me. But in a benevolent way. But yeah, I mean, I don't need people preaching at me. And the opposite of faith is not certainty. You know, I mean, I always think with the Christian right. I mean, again, no offense to many Christian right people here, but I always think, God, that must be so nice to be so sure of yourself. You know, but everything I've ever learned, emotionally, spiritually, cognitively, and psychologically, has been because I wasn't sure. And so I went after, I sought something, I sought answers. I sat at the feet of the masters, whether it was philosophers or biologists. And you know, in the Christian tradition, in the mystic tradition, there is a prayer and a saying that we don't pray for the food, we pray for the thirst, you know, to be seekers of truth, and to be seekers of meaning, to be seekers of our place here as part of. So thank you for saying that. That's really nice. And when I wrote Somehow, I didn't want to write anything preachy or as if I know much, but I felt that my son, who's 35, and his son, who's 15, who live with us on our property, I felt that what they are experiencing and about to experience, and what their futures look like, is very dire. and very scary. And I never give up hope. I've written whole books on hope. This book is about love, and I wanted to put in one place every single thing I know that has ever helped me when I was lost. So I wanted it to be kind of an owner's manual for when I'm gone. And ultimately, all these little pieces I started writing had to do with love. And I thought, oh no, I'm writing a book about love. That's even too California for me. And I've lived here for 70 years, you know, so that's how it came to be. And what I really, my intention was to do what you very kindly pointed out, which was like to not preach or to insist or assert.
It's as if you're telling us that love lives in between these events and these spaces and these people in our lives, or these events. It's the day, it's the moment. You quoted Neil as saying everything that's important in life you can experience beautiful in a 10-minute walk.
Yeah.
And that just, again,
it's that's the very beginning of something my husband said, which was everything true and beautiful about life, I think he said 80%, can be experienced on a 10-minute walk. And it's true if that's your intention. Now, this guy that helped Bill Wilson get AA off the ground in the 30s said to him, sometimes I think that heaven is just a new pair of glasses. So it's the same thing, is that if you have the intention to put on better glasses where you're seeing everything that still works and that is beautiful and that is rich and inspiring, you just put the better glasses on, because I often have glasses on that are so savvy and funny about pointing out everything wrong with everything and everyone. That's sort of my strong suit. In fact, I've made a career of that. Can I do something really quick and shameless?
Please.
Okay, everybody, you should look away because, okay, so I've mentioned my husband twice, Neil. Everything that is true and beautiful can be experienced on a 10-minute walk. Another thing he said, and this isn't the shameless part, this is a really valuable thing he said before I do the shameless part. He taught me 8.5 years ago what he teaches his clients, which is to say, I don't know, right? And I was raised by brilliant intellectuals, and I was raised to know, right? And we had the golden calf, they were atheists, the golden calf was the New York Times. Right. And so you read that and then you knew. And he taught me to say, I don't know. Like, where do we start today? I don't know what it is, the 22nd January. I don't know. How are you gonna get through this period in the family with this extremely, I don't know. And so that has really become a mantra, and it's very subversive to say, I don't know. I mean, not in the classroom, but in the classroom of the world. How could you know? You know, how could you know? When my mom was sick, and then I'll do the shameless thing. When my mom was sick with Alzheimer's, we got to talk to not her, but my brothers and I got to talk to a gerontologist nurse, an old woman who like had wisdom. And we were saying my mom also had diabetes and she had an eating disorder and she had all this. And we don't know how to keep her from eating bread and cookies. We don't know how to make sure we don't know. And we did all of our anxiety and our self-doubt. We just thought, you know, we're just clueless. And then when we stopped, there was just this moment of silence, which is what grace looks like about a third of the time. She said, how could you know? Right? So it's a beautiful way to live. And here's a shameless part. A couple of people are trying to escape. I'll have Nikki or Martha go after them. Here's the shameless part. In July, after about 6 more months of this, you're going to be frantic for some peace and grace and wisdom and sanity. And if you go to my Facebook page, my husband and I do this retreat, and it's spiritual, and it's about the inner critic. And there's 12-step meetings every night, and there's yoga, and there's meditation, and it's in Costa Rica. Ooh. So you fly. Right. And so if you want to find out more about that, go to my Facebook page. It's Anne Lamott. Okay, that's it. I'm so sorry. I had to do that. Okay, I'm sorry. It's the altitude. It's being back at sea level. I'm sorry. Okay, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
You write about.
I can give you 10 extra minutes for that. Okay.
10
Is
extra
that a
minutes
good
for
deal?
that.
Yeah, yeah. You can have, yeah.
Okay. You write about pain in your life,
Yeah.
addiction, loss. And my question is, could you come to your perspective on life now without that? Is that the basis of it? So
I don't know.
good answer. Good answer. I'm not going to ask
Yeah.
you any more questions.
Yeah. The people I'm close to, the people who have been my soulmates, which and my best girlfriends and my best men friends who tend to be gay, are so profound and rich in spirit and truth because they had incredible difficulties and challenges and being ostracized and marginalized. And if somebody had a really incredibly happy life with parents that were well and had gotten psychological help and been early proponents of the women's movement and whatnot, and we don't have that much to talk about, really. And unless they were drug addicts and alcoholics, then come sit here. But I was very, very savagely bullied as a child because I had this crazy kinky hair, and I was too smart, and I was too sensitive, and so I cried. And boys would go by on bikes and throw rocks at me, you know, and call me Frizzhead and stuff. So what did I do? I got funny, for one thing, and I had, because of that, because the world wasn't going to affirm me, because I didn't look right or wasn't like the right kind of girl. I sought something deeper and more true. My best friend's mother was a Christian Scientist. Now, my parents had a list of the craziest humans on earth, and the Christian Scientists were at the top of the list. And I, you know, like I heard Mary Baker Eddy, who is actually the mother and father of all New Thought, of Eckhart Tolle or Marianne Williamson or anyone that has been the New Thought. It begins in the 1800s with Mary Baker, Mrs. Eddy, right? And I heard scripture, and I heard that I was a beautiful, precious, exquisite child of God, which was not my parents' model of childhood. That I was 35 years old with a baby, an infant, when I discovered that a B+ was a good grade. That had not come up. And I mean that literally, that had not come up. And so the pain and the rejection by the world, quote unquote, by the culture, I think caused my deep longing for what was real, what was true, and what was abiding. What was true and would last into the next grade, or when I went out onto the blacktop. So yeah, I mean, I hated every minute of the pain. I've hated every moment of the pain, every long period of the pain. You all know that. It's just like I would say to God, you have got to be kidding. You have got to be kidding. And then every single time I can say to God, I wouldn't have missed that for the world, because it gave me part of me back. It gave me something. It gave me a lessening of the judgment. It gave me a lessening of the armor. Helped me take some of the armor off. It helped my heart warm up a little. So, yeah, boy, talk about a mixed grill.
Yeah.
Pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You live in an intergenerational world more than most people do. You write about being a Sunday school teacher, younger friends, older friends. As I read your writing, it just feels like you live in an unusually age diverse world. And you write about being a Sunday school teacher and a story that you tell the students about skin. And I wonder if you would tell us that story.
Yeah. This is a story we always told. My favorite thing with my Sunday school kids was I would always ask you. I go to a tiny failing church, so my Sunday school classes might be 3 kids because there might be 25 or 30 adults in the sanctuary. But I'd always say to them, this isn't it, but I'd say to them, what's the difference between you and God? And then I'd say, God never thinks she's you, right? So, but the story that Laura wanted me to tell was about a little kid, a little girl who cannot fall asleep. She's so frightened. And I was the most frightened child you can even imagine. I'm a pretty frightened child still, with a lot of faith simultaneously. But her mother keeps coming in, it's in the dark, and saying, honey, just go to sleep. God is here with you. He's right on the bed. Just, you're safe, go to sleep. Well, this goes on and on and on, but I see we're at the 0 hour, so I don't want to waste more time on that. But it goes every time, honey, go to sleep. Jesus is right here in the room with you. Just fall, you can just fall asleep. I'm next to her. And then finally she comes in, the mother's like increasingly tired, and go to sleep. God is here with you in your bedroom. You're safe and sound. And the little girl says in this tiny little voice, I need someone with skin on. And so I would always use that as an example of who I think we are called to be. I know this is not divinity school and that it's the longevity center, but she asked, right? Okay, I was just sitting here innocently, and she asked. So that's who I do believe we're called to be. And God is like so fraught. And I don't mean God, and the God you don't believe in is the same God I don't believe in, you know? I mean goodness, and Gus, the great universal spirit, Gus, and all that is good and true and beautiful and divine and sacred and holy, which is kindness, which is sharing what we have. And and there was one other story I told my kids. I don't know if it's in somehow or not, but it's a story I love. Little boy. I mean, all these stories are about scared kids, right? Because that's the truth of most of our spiritual identities, is that we're scared kids. It's a scary, weird world, and it's been hard to get into adulthood. It's just hard here. So a little boy, we'll say, is upstairs and he can't fall asleep, and he calls down to his dad, could you bring me a glass of water? And I'm so thirsty. And dad goes, no, you've had water, you've brushed your teeth, go to sleep. 10 minutes later, Dad, please, could you bring me a glass of water? No, go to bed. This goes on and on. 15 minutes later, Daddy, please, could you bring me? No, if you ask me one more time, I'm going to come up there and I'm going to spank you. Another pause, 5 minutes. Dad, on your way up here to spank me, could you bring me a glass of water? So. No, but you really can have like 10 or 15 more minutes because of that, the Costa Rica thing. But I kind of want to be back at wherever they found me, like at noon or something, or 12:15, but I'm not in a hurry. And that's another thing about being old. God, you just race around so much less, partly by necessity. And I mean, mostly you do. You have the option of, when I was younger, I mean, there was so much drive and hustle, you know, and I was hustling and I had this drive, and God, I just don't have it anymore. It might be that, you know, sometimes I think grace is just tiredness. And, but whatever it is, that left me at some point, you know, by 60, I would say a good 10 years ago, the drive and the hustle. I don't need to speak to another audience as long as I live. I literally mean that. I don't need to publish another book as long as I live. And I mean that literally. I don't know what my future holds, but because I have a religious life, I believe I know who holds the future. But boy, I'm not in a hurry. You know, I'm just kind of, I call it the sacrament of ploppage. And I'm kind of in ploppage right now, so you can have your way with me.
I want everyone, if you haven't already read Somehow Thoughts on Love, to read it. It's love, kindness, gentleness. It's a start. It's a good start.
It is a start when you don't know what to do, like everybody right now. What do we do? What do we do? Where do we start? What do we do? What do we do? So, I mean, I write these Facebook pieces that are like, well, here's what I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of gobsmacked. What do we do? What am I going to do today? Well, I came here And when I get home, I ask my son to help me. And that's like another kind of love is, you know, the women I know and the women my age, especially, we're so good at being the helpers, right? And at being like the flight attendants. Like I was at 6 years old, 5 years old, I'm a flight attendant in my family. I'm able to make blender drinks at 8 years old, right? And I'm raising the baby because my parents are having issues, let's say. And you get so good at being there for everyone. And taking my mom, who's from Liverpool, so this is partly an English thing. For the 17 years that I lived at the house with my mom and dad in their miserable marriage, my mom took the broken egg yolk at breakfast, right? You never give it to a man, right? You didn't even give it to the girl child because you didn't. And so you learn to, you know, you get it. And then you get it on Thursday, you get the broken egg yolk, you get the next one, and we all take turns. Egg yolk always breaks, you're cooking for 5, you know, and you learn. And so I asked my son, for whom I do an infinite number of mitzvahs, if he could pick me up in San Rafael, because I have 2 doctor's appointments, right? And if he could, so I don't have to go all the way home, get the car, go back, and then go back, because I will have been in the car a lot today. So, and then what I'm going to do on the way home is we'll go to Safeway. And I don't know what to do. This situation we all find ourselves in is too big a hole, you know, for me to find my way out of, but I can bring food to the hungry. That's a very simple thing to do. And you always want to remember cookies for the young ones. Right, so you get wonderful, delicious, fine food and a sack of Oreos, you know, and you just take it over, you drop it off. Or in Texas, I had a mentor named Praise the Lord Sarah, who was from Texas in the late 80s. And she told me about this thing called porch presents. I've written about it somewhere or other. And in Texas, what you do, then I know you're having a hard day, that this went very badly, and that you don't know how you're going to face everybody tomorrow and whatnot. And so I know you're feeling sort of bad. So I find something that I like. Maybe it's an old beaded bracelet someone gave me. And I wrap it up in newspaper. It's just a porch present. It's not wrapped. You don't need to even thank me or write a thank you. And I wrap it up and I tape it, and then I bring it and I put it on your porch, right? And then that, if you want to have loving feelings, which is hard, you know, challenging right now to have loving feelings and an open heart, you do loving things. You take the action. You take the action, and then the insight follows. Like in my family with intellectuals, I mean, no offense to you, it was like the mantra was figure it out. Oh, figure it out is a terrible slogan for life, for almost everything except classroom, you know? Figure it out. Good luck with that. Right?
I think you know a lot of answers myself.
They're simple though. They're very simple.
Those are the answers.
You
So
want to
thank
talk about,
you.
wait,
No,
but you want to talk about the shoes. You want to just, no?
I wanted to thank you for giving us hope.
Oh,
Hope.
yeah.
To thank you for being with us.